I welcome to Overdose Guitar Tuition. So I've got a classic album inspection for you. March 21st, 1977, AC/DC released their third album, or third international album, Let There Be Rock. Now this is the Australian release. International release isn't until July 25th, but we'll go on Australian release day today, but I'll be talking about the European running order. So track 5 on the Australian release is Crabsody in Blue. Over here from, I think it's the Dirty Deeds album. We just basically got that slapped on Let There Be Rock as well. So prior to this, DC done Australian High Voltage, Australian TNT. Those two albums were amalgamated for the European High Voltage in early 76, and you got Dirty Deeds done Dirt Cheap, and then obviously Let There Be Rock. So at this time, DC, prior to this, had been over in London. I think they'd moved Lock and Stock over there in the hot summer of 76 and started making, in the height of punk days, making inroads on the pub scene, then playing places like the Marquee and further afield, and earning a reputation as a great live band. Later on, they'd be appear on something called Rock Goes to College over here, and they make the Let There Be Rock video, the French-made video, which has got a stunning performance. But DC, under a lot of pressure from the record company in America, and they will beat the chop with this album and still be under pressure with Power Age, and it won't beat a Highway to Hell. But this album, I think, kind of saves their bacon for the time. So what distinguishes this album, so I'm itching a bit, I think it gets rid of sort of novelty aspects and residues of kind of glam rock. I think like DC, are probably a bit into the Slade sound and that. Like I like Long Way to the Top, and I like the bagpipes, but it's quite a weird thing for DC to do when you listen to them now. Then you have sort of like songs like Love at First Feel, Big Balls, Making a Fun Waiting Around to Be a Millionaire, Can I Sit Next to You Girl, and the Dirty Deeds album and the High Voltage album, which, like, although they're kind of fun tracks, they've not got that cutting edge punch that we know DC can do. I think what distinguishes this album is it's got one less track. It's 8 tracks. It's a little longer. It's 41 minutes. But I think what it does is it kind of makes a more cohesive sound. And I think if you played this to someone, they would instantly recognise it as Bon Era DC. It's got all the structural and lyrical and things like we expect. So what's unusual about this album, which is the same as like another album I've covered today, Number of the Beast, is that it's starts with 2 deep cuts. So one of the interesting things with classic albums is, generally they do start with like what I call a heavy hitter, and they get going straight away. And sometimes your deeper cuts or cuts people aren't as into come later. But this album starts with Go Down, and then Dog Eats Dog. Dog Eat Dog's actually the shortest track, 3 minutes to 35, but they're both really good tracks. They've got like really punchy, meaty riffs. Dog Eat Dog's got a really cool kind of jungly type rhythm from Phil. And they're really good. The great DC tracks, and they're more interesting in a way because we haven't heard them before. 5 of the tracks on this album will make up, find their way onto the If You Want Blood album, I think. I can't remember all the tracks on that. Track 3's, that is on If You Want Blood, is Let There Be Rock. Again, a total like DC anthem. You can really hear Malcolm's rhythm guitar pounding on this. I think that's the thing when I listened to it fresh today, like it just really, really stood out how punchy it is and how much Malcolm drives the band. His timing, his feel is what the others pull off, I think. And then side 1 of the original album finished with Bad Boy Boogie. Obviously this is 4 minutes 27, but on the If You Want Blood, this is about 7 minutes because that Mangus breaks down with that lovely pedal tone though. So this is a great track as well, and exploits the guitars of Angus and Malcolm. And I think that's the other thing that comes through on this album, is that Angus and Malcolm really start to sound like that duo that we know so well, the way they're dissecting parts and the way Angus starts to solo. Vanda and Young produced this, and it was recorded at Alba Studios, so I'm guessing they flew back from London. I think, they would have gone back to Australia to do this. So it's got that Vanda and Young sound, and the Vanda and Young sound is just so stripped down. There's no reverb. There's none of the subtle sort of effects things that Lang put in, but it's raw DC, unpolished. One of the interesting things of this album, you can hear in the gaps if they play a chord and it's cut off, you can hear like little bits of handling noise, particularly on Malcolm's side. And I quite like that. I mean, that's the sort of thing now digitally, if you had any noise and gaps, you would cut it out. and be perfectionist about it. But a lot of songs kind of start a little raggedy and finish as well, that way. But I think a criticism is the tuning issues. There's something Mutt Lang sorted out, was making sure those guitars were in tune. But on this, the disparity between Malcolm's Gretsch and Angus's Gibson is more prevalent, particularly on Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be. Track we'll come to in a sec, where the opening chords are very out of tune. For the uninitiated, Gibson guitars have notorious problems with the tuning and intonation between the G, the D, the G and the B string. So basically, you tune your D to your G, and then you get problems with your B, and you have to kind of, you have to tweak that, and that means you have to tweak the high E. And that means if you're playing with a guitar that's not a Gibson, those guitars don't talk to each other. It's a notorious problem with Les Pauls, SGs. They've never sorted it out. And I find it intensely annoying whenever I have to tune Gibson guitars. But anyway, there's some of the Epiphones. So that's like probably one of the issues then. Obviously, this is in the time before electronic tuners, probably using tuning forks and maybe not being as diligent with that when recording. But side 2 open with Problem Child. So obviously we got this on this would be Crabs in Blue, an Australian version. I kind of think this works better, rockier. Crabs in Blue. When I listen to it, his Fon's vocal sounds higher, and it's a little bit more that thing like the Jack and the albums before, but it's just my take. Problem Child's a great track, and then Overdose, the other deep cut. So this is a little longer, it's 6 minutes and 9, so it's longer than Crabs in Blue, so the running order on the European release running time is longer. But Overdose is interesting. I think this is where you can really hear the guitar Malcolm picks. You can hear that Plexi Marshall. You can almost hear the amp buzzing, hissing. You can see the red light on the amp. It's so alive, it's right there in the speaker. And Anne comes in and, really good again. So Overdose is the other deep cut. Again, like Go Down Dog Eat Dog, it's a really good track. They could have played it live and it would have been out of place. There you got Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, live classic. And like I said, I mentioned about the tuning on this. 4 minutes 14, so second shortest track. Great tune. And then it finishes with Whole Lot of Rosie, 5 minutes and 24. A song needs no introduction. Don't need to hear it again. I would say like the live versions of some of these are better. So Bad Boy Boogie live, Whole Lot of Rosie, Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be. Those If You Want Blood versions are probably even better. And DC's one of those bands where they are kind of better live and can upscale more live. But like I said, I said it was released, recorded album studios Jan, February 77. It's official. When I looked on Wikipedia, it's official sort of sales. What they did have certifications for were 2.85 million, but I suspect it's shit more than about 4, but it's probably maybe more than that, 5. So it's a success now for DC. At the time, I think it charted 149 on the Billboard chart. I forget where it charted in the UK chart, but I think it did enough for them, for the record company to go, the international label, Atlantic, to go, okay, let's put some more money in. Because DC would have been, running a lot of debt at this point, carrying their crew, paying for the band's accommodation. It just doesn't happen now, basically. Bands don't get support. If you don't go big on your first album or second album, you'd get dropped. Not that bands are on major labels now, recording costs are lower. Bands are kind of, the model's different, I suppose. But it took a time for, like a lot of bands then, for DC to become the global phenomenon that they are. But this is a great record. I think I give it a 9 out of 10. There's not a bad track on it. It's really raw in your face. Like I said, shame about the tuning on some tracks, but the song's quality. It benefits from having 8 songs. It's tight, it's punchy. It is the first kind of, right, this is what AC/DC are going to sound like. I think the Power, this is some people's favourite DC album. I think Power Age is better. Obviously, I'll cover that next year. And I prefer Highway to Hell, but, that's the Purple Patch over If You Want Blood, that Bon era from 77 to 79. Not much more I can say about that. Let There Be Rock, 45 years old today if you go off the Australian release. I hope you enjoyed that. Remember to share and subscribe if you enjoy these. I do these videos on my Edward Box Guitar Tuition channel, so as you just put in Edward Box, it'll come up. But I also have my Box on the Box Rock and Celluloid channel, where there's some videos of this kind of stuff you can look at as well, but more film related as well. So thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers.